welcome to the meeting in order. A lot of change, some very exciting news. We'd like to welcome Ethan Fellows here, who is going to help us with some of the organizing and some stuff. And so I guess the first thing I figured we could do is let us all introduce ourselves to Ethan, and then Ethan can introduce himself to us, and just get him a little bit of lay down on what's going on. So I can certainly start. My name is Nathan Bazzaio. I am the chair of this committee. I work for the Vermont Center for Independent Living in the Burlington office. VCIL is a community advocacy agency for people with disabilities. And I have been on the advisory committee in some form and another since I started here. So it's been about 8 years since I've been here, and I've been was just an outside party advisor. Then I became a member. Then I became the chair. And it's been a lot of twists and turns, but I think it's great. Accomplished some really good things. I think it's capable of doing some great things. So that's a little bit about me. Let's go on to Laura Siegel.
Hello, my name is Laura Siegel. I'm the Director of Deaf, Hard of Hearing, Deaf Blind Services for the Department of Disability, Aging, and Independent Living. And I've already met Ethan through another meeting that we belong to. So nice to see you again.
All right. Amber.
Yeah, hi Ethan, I'm Amber Fulcher. I'm the ADA 504 coordinator for UVM. And I work with Vanessa, and Vanessa is the one who connected with me about joining this group. Nice to meet you.
And I don't know if you already know Sophie, or Sophie, you can certainly introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Sophie. I'm the Parks Comprehensive Planner in the Department of Parks, Recreation, Waterfront, here representing the department. Welcome.
Welcome. And I believe you know Vanessa. Would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself? Ethan?
Yeah, I'd love to. Yeah, thanks for the warm welcome, everyone. See some familiar faces. Yeah, Laura, I think we see each other every other week at the VT Language Justice meetings. So I'm Ethan. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm an outreach coordinator here at CEDO. And a big part of the things I'm in charge of is the language access plan, which is why I was really excited to be invited to this committee, because I'm really interested in making sure that we nail all the aspects of accessibility into our plan and make sure that inclusion is accounted for.
Excellent, excellent. So yeah, so thank you. So I did send everybody a copy of an agenda that I really just kind of threw together, and I'll just share the screen for a minute just so everybody can see it, and we can just take a look at it. But really, I do think it'd be worthwhile touching base about the language access plan a little bit. And this is more, I just kind of stole Vanessa's email about some items that I figured we could look at as going forward. And Vanessa, please feel free to step in at any time, mentioning anything, but review possible initiative and community collaborations for the new fiscal year. We usually run through a calendar year, but I think obviously fiscal year ends in June. So actually June 29th, new fiscal year is July 1st. So we have, I don't know, maybe Vanessa, you can discuss what would happen. We lose that source of funding. I don't know if there's any plans for us to get new funding starting in the new fiscal year, or if there's something that needs to be done about that, or what where that is going forward.
Yeah, so if it's helpful just to add to the conversation here, right now, I know that department heads in the city are being asked to put together their budgets because that has to go forward to city council to get voted on. Last year, as many people know, because the CAO, the chief administrative officer, was overseeing my department in HR at the time, I had advocated for us to have dollars set aside for things like marketing, interpretation services, things like this. And I think Laura needs us to do a stop share so that she can see Marcus's video.
Okay, hold on here.
So essentially we had asked for the 15K and it was awarded to us, right? And it sits in HR right now, but we've only used it primarily for interpretation. What I would be proposing, right, is that this committee comes up with, well, here's our initiatives in the year ahead so that we can send that to the mayor and those dollars can be allocated for before the budget proposal moves forward. Now, because this committee will be staffed and is staffed now by CEDO, that request would need to come from the CEDO department for the new year.
Okay. So really what we need to do is really put together what our initiatives, what our goals are, and what we plan to the upcoming year. And I definitely see the language access plan being part of that. I think that's one of the more achievable things that we could put on there. So let's talk about how we're going to do that for a moment now. Put together initiatives. Should we be doing, and Ethan, I don't know if this would be something, one of the things we'd have for you to be is a minutes taker. Are you down with recording?
Yeah,
What's like, okay, perfect. So then we can review what we want to do about that. So when we talk about possible initiatives, what we have for the upcoming year, let's investigate what some of those are. I certainly think helping finalize and complete making sure people with disabilities are included in the language access plan would be one of those initiatives. So we can certainly add that in there. I don't know exactly what that would look like. Would that be, I mean, I know Laura, you're attending meetings. I've been attending other meetings beside this, but can anybody give me some feedback on how we could, as this committee, be stating how we'd be participating to the language access plan?
So last week, Susanna Davis from the Agency of Administration, she's the Director of Racial Equity, and she hosted the Language Access Summit. We had about 44 people. I'm really happy to share the email along with the two attachments that she sent after the meeting. But it's basically, so the next step is I am meeting with a bunch of people on Friday, along with someone from the state of Massachusetts, about doing an ADA audit for all three branches of what they can do to make things accessible, not just for language access, but any area of disability. And so after we had that meeting, I'm guessing we would do a follow-up meeting to draft a formal proposal to the governor's office of what that would look like, because that the goal is that everything that she will create, it would apply statewide, not just one agency.
Yeah, I think that's great from a statewide. I'm more talking about us being more focused on, for the Burlington point of view, because I think it's going to the mayor's office. So I'm just trying to think about what we already have this language access plan put together. I'm just wondering what else we could do to add on to it as this committee. And I've read parts of it. I don't even know if it is something that this committee should be super involved in already, because we'll have members for the committee acting as, as somebody as part of this committee and being on these other parts. I'm just trying to think of some suggestions on that part.
So some of the things that we had discussed in the past, and I'll iterate them again here, is I think that this committee can be in charge of offering best practices, right, to city employees around things like event planning, right, vetting resources that we know are really excellent, like I'm thinking about Bancro being one of them, and sort of encapsulating that in, a couple of working documents. And that would translate to the training and onboarding that Ethan and I are working on together to supply to each and every department, so they're doing best practices in customer service delivery, right? So that's a couple of outcomes that I would see.
So it would be members of this committee or somebody putting together training videos or documents for best practices, what it sounds like.
Right.
Oh, okay.
And some of that Laura's actually already equipped us with, right? And I'm also seeing things like not overthinking it, right? But just like a singular document that talks about when you're putting together a PowerPoint presentation, here are some things that you should know to make things accessible, right? Or planning an event, here are some things to keep in
Yeah.
mind, like that kind of stuff. Yeah.
And I also have, I think I've mentioned this before, I actually have a whole PowerPoint slide for a while. It was actually going to the commerce places of different cities and towns of how to make your events more accessible. So I talked about things like fonts, I talked about things like, so that could be something that we could certainly work together to form into some kind of training that we could certainly put into the initiative. So I'm guessing the game plan of that would be we would try to put some stuff together and we could pass it on to Ethan, I would think, and then Ethan could help tie that in. So those are definitely some initiatives for goals we can set for acting. So we could put together some training initiatives. We could put that around like making public meetings accessible, both to people with all kinds of disabilities, deaf, hard of hearing, physical, visual, some other things. We can certainly see feedback. I see another thing that's very important is really just making sure, and I don't know if this could be called initiative or what, I really think our website, our local website is in sore need of updating. It's really kind of out of place. I don't think any of the committee members have been really updated. I might be the only one who's actually currently on there. I'm even sure if I'm still on there. So I do think we need to update all the information on that and work on getting a thing where we're regularly posting, meeting minutes, links to these meetings, and anything else that is necessary. And also, this is where I think Ethan will be getting out, is just getting the word out that we're having meetings and we're having hearings. And so getting the website update and then just getting members, just getting new people from the committee. We have kind of like, and I really thank everybody for their commitment here. But, and obviously, some people want to be here and it's busy. But when this committee was first put together, I think there were representatives from different organizations around Burlington. So we had some community members, we had advocates for some agencies, but we also had members from like the Burlington School District. We had representatives from AARP. We had a representative from BABVI. So we had kind of different representatives to come deal with some issues. So I do think it would be getting those people out to them, and then blind and visually impaired. I don't know if you're asking that, Laura, but and then making sure, I just want to make sure the right steps are taken to get those recommendations to the mayor's office to be properly appointed. So I think, getting this committee off the ground would be, first of all, establishing some initiatives to do it, getting some people on board to be members, updating the website to make sure it's, up to date, posting minutes, and addressing topics. Anybody else have any suggestions for some other initiatives we could put in?
Nate, I was just thinking of the information that's on the website as a city employee, and we do a lot of public outreach. Just any of the tools that we could tap into to expand our awareness, but also how do we get translation services? How do we, what budget can we pull from, or is there a budget? Those kinds of questions from an employee standpoint would be super helpful, just because we're always trying to broaden our reach, but we don't necessarily know how to. If that makes sense.
Yeah, and that's part of what the language access plan is doing. So part of the strategic partnership with CETO and then HR is to design those trainings that are specifically for employees, because you're right. I think people don't know what they don't know, and they just need to be given the guide that's already been vetted for those services and know where they can get those supports financially. So we're going to be in charge of designing that and then getting that out to the employees.
Yeah, and I also think in addition to the training of the employees, I think we also, one thing we did a lot is doing training to the community. So another thing we've done is, what we haven't done in a few years is done training to people in Burlington to different things and workshops on just like ADA 101, where we learned about the American Disabilities Act, transportation. We actually did a thing where we just talked about different laws surrounding transportation, and we actually had sometimes some people come in. We invited, GMT to come, and we invited someone from, SSTA to come to talk about the ins and outs of that. Fair housing, I think, we would just pick up some things and then hold workshops. I think that would definitely be some things, and we could invite people, or we can have, I think there's an existing list of people to do that, who can have that. I think we could just provide space, and I think, when we initially did, I think the goal was to do, 2 to 3 of these a year, just invite people to community trainings, and do some of those. So I definitely think that would be a perfect example of some things to do. Laura.
I was just gonna say in the chat, I shared something that I already created for the Secretary of State. It's related to campaigning, but a lot of the context is relevant to how to make things. But what I'm trying to say is that you can use it as a starting point to help create the document to include more disabilities and how you can make them inclusive if you would like to use that as a guide. I mean, it's the same thing with my training that I created for the agencies that can be found on the YouTube channel. I mean, their YouTube channel. It just gives people the superficial level of information that they need to know, disturbed, deaf, hard of hearing, deaf, blind people. And then oftentimes people reach out to do a more in-depth training. But when you said about, I think it would be really amazing if, I mean, I don't know who would be the person to do it, but it would be amazing if the city of Burlington would offer like ongoing every 4 months of ADA training or language access or something like that, and just make it available on the website so that if anyone ever navigates the website, at least they know where to look. And another suggestion would be that you could create a whole page that, I don't know if you already do, that says accessibility. And then that way it's easier for people to navigate, to find all the resources that's relevant to the subject.
Yeah, I know we definitely had some conversations in the past about making sure there is almost like, accessibility in the Burlington area, something where we had a notification to people where they would know where to go, what's accessible. I think we, a resource page, exactly. So I'll even look at things about like accessible bathrooms, just even see people like that. Or one thing I always advocated for is, and even though I don't know where we get to see Burlington, where to put it, and this is Vermont in general, Vermont is kind of a unique state where anybody with an accessibility placard can park anywhere for free. So you can park by, but what I hear from a lot of people visiting out of town is they come in and they say, hey, I can never find a parking spot. There's nothing over here and I never have to pay for parking. I said, well, did you know, in Vermont, you could park anywhere for free as long as you have the placard. And they're like, oh, I wish I knew that before I came here. So it's almost like on a resource page where we, and I was kind of advocating that, the city in Vermont in general should put something when people go to pay, on the little toll things, people with with placards can park anywhere for free. But just stuff like that, just stuff to encourage people who are coming, who might not know unique things about this state in the area. And that was something I was kind of hoping for either the city just even put something above the parking things, just saying, people with placards can park for free. And now it's actually even better because you can park in the parking garage, which was actually a huge issue for me. You can park in the parking garage and you don't even have to, if you have a mobility issue, you don't even have to reach out and get a ticket and do that. You could they'll just look at your license plate as you go out. So it's actually, now I can park in the parking garage, which I was never able to do during the winter. So I think there's certain things like that we could definitely do as a resource page or even provide resources on that. Yeah, Laura.
I was just gonna say that's a good idea because I remember one time for Disability Awareness Day, there was a person that was coming from out of state, and a weird sense, she had no idea that the state didn't have a metal detector, and she was kind of like, it would have been nice to have known that. That way to, because usually people with mobility issues, they usually need to be more prepared to go through the metal detector, right? Nate?
Yeah, yeah. So a resource page would be great, getting information out there. So like I'm hearing, work on the language access plan, providing trainings, that we could do YouTube videos and stuff and trainings for both or information for both municipal employees and for the public. So maybe try to have a couple of trainings, 2 or 3 trainings a year to the public on various different issues. Updating the website, and making sure we get all the information on there, and getting new members. Yeah, that's a pretty good play. I also know that one thing that we're working on, and this is something that I always was kind of uncomfortable with, and I wasn't sure, but I think it's really good. Is I know that when Martha Keenan was on here, I really pushed to allow people on this committee to look at plans for upcoming projects, and kind of providing our feedback on that. I have kind of mixed feelings about it. I definitely think it's necessary to do that, and I have pretty good knowledge of the ADA. I'm not an ethics expert or an architect, so I was just wondering what people wanted their feedback on that, because I do think when we are hearing proposals about upcoming buildings and things being built, it's important to hear. It is important from somebody with a disability to provide their feedback, but it's also there's really specific aspect of laws here, when you get into building codes and all that has to do with ADA parts, about what we think our role could be with that.
I'm also thinking about how the liaison relationship can support that, right? So obviously we have Sophie, and I'm also thinking like a liaison from the BCA, given that they do so many events, makes good sense, but particularly the capital planner position, right? Because they're looking strategically what's happening citywide, and there's like like infrastructural support. I feel like it would be wise to have that person on this committee, and that any new projects that come forward, they would talk about that with us for input.
Yeah, and yep, Sophie. Yep.
I was just going to say that person has just been hired and is coming on board very shortly. So it would be something to loop them in as soon as they're, get the, their feet under them, kind of speak, just to let them have a chance to settle in, but also make sure it's included from the beginning. So it's not like this extra thing that comes on further down the line. But that person that's a committee I sit on too, just so you know. And then from the plan perspective, we would certainly appreciate the vetting of new structures we put in for playgrounds or whatnot, because there is the ADA that we are all required from an architectural perspective to comply to, but we're trying to go over and above that where we can. So having that input would be very valuable. So it's definitely something we're welcome to, but I just want to say about the capital position, it's just been filled. So that should be a person that could, jump right in, I would hope.
Yeah, and thank you, Vanessa, for bringing that up, because one thing I did mention was that when I first on the committee had always, in terms of direct City of Burlington employees that we've had on this committee, it was usually someone from Parks and Rec, which Sophie's doing. There's also someone from the Department of Public Works, which was what Martha was doing, and I can't remember. So that would be like the city planning part, and then well, I mean, I guess Emma was kind of doing and what Sophie was doing. So there are usually a few different people from and then HR and the ADA coordinator, who I think that's another thing we might want to. Yeah, we've never really had ADA. I think that's another thing we might want to do as a committee, is advocate for a ADA coordinator within the city of Burlington. I definitely think that's something that we could do. Yeah, Amber.
Yeah, I agree with you. Just spending time to look at like the Burlington websites and stuff. I'm not even sure, like when we build a resource page for the public, one of the things I think we'd want to be able to talk about is like, who do they report barriers to? Who do they get guidance from? Who could really kind of lead that charge and like, reviewing plans and giving feedback and operating in that kind of more legal capacity. And so That's one that I think that it's a big kind of missing piece for Burlington that I see as well.
Yep. So I guess I think we all agree that's very important to have an ADA coordinator for the city of Burlington. I guess my question is, and maybe you interperson, Vanessa, more like when we're requesting, funding or doing something, do we want to say, hey, we want some funding to hold you guys accountable? Well, CEDO does. You know what I mean? How do we go to the city of Burlington and say, we want to make sure, there's transparency for a ADA coordinator? Any suggestions on how to do that delicately?
I think the way to strategically do it is a direct letter to the mayor, right? Is saying like, here are one of the suggestions, and being really clear about like what the gaps are. Because essentially what ends up happening, and I think folks know this, is that if a new position is to be created, it's dollars, and then city council has to vote on that position even being established. And then from there, then we can do a recruitment process. But I think we have to first point out what the issues are and how that role would backfill a gap.
Yeah, and I certainly also think that, they're required to have an ADA coordinator, and I guess we all know this from our experiences. A lot of times what happens is many city councils just take the ADA coordinator and stick it on somebody, just say, boom, you're an ADA coordinator, and they have no knowledge. So, yeah. And so we really want to say, we want to make sure there's a transparency with establishing an ADA coordinator, and we want to make sure they are knowledgeable, and able to provide information on issues with the ADA. So, so I definitely think these are all really, really good issues to put down as tangible goals on that when we draft. So I guess I think Ethan has put down some good goals and initiatives that we can work on. Correct. And so we just need to get these and then put together a proposal. I'm working a proposal to the mayor's office. Laura?
I just had a thought. Before we can even get to that point of getting the ADA coordinator, is there a way, do you have an FAQ section on the City of Burlington website? So maybe on the FAQ, you could create a subcategory with general question that people typically ask, like the one you mentioned, whether a person is required to pay with the decal for parking, and then there's an answer key. I don't know what other question you might typically have.
Yeah, I definitely think that would be something to add onto there. So you're just talking about a facts page about accessibility stuff? Is that what you're referring to?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just so that people know, like, do you have an accessibility map of the city?
Yeah.
Like all the public places, like a people, Sophie?
I'm just building on that idea. I wonder if the asset manager, the GIS managing, can have a layer that's, these places are accessible parking spaces where you could go to the map and just see that information instead of all the other layers of it, which could be linked from our webpage. I think that would be really helpful because it could be updated as it changes too. It wouldn't be static.
I mean, for example, the Vermont legislative website, they just added an accessibility page about 2 weeks ago, my suggestion. And they even included on the accessibility page a link to an accessibility map of the state house. I think that's very helpful. There are a few things that's missing from their website, but I don't exactly have the manpower to tell them. I can only make suggestions.
Amber, I know she had a hand raised.
I was just curious, I wasn't sure if I caught what Sophie said there, that there is already some kind of an existing map and there may be some potential for like GIS mapping or some kind of an add-on that we could do with something that's in place already. Is that right?
So I'm not sure there's a map that's solely focused on accessibility yet, but we do have a asset inventory that's been being updated very recently. And I think that there's a possibility of creating that ADA map citywide based on all the information that's already included in our systems, just based on DPW's work and Parks's, you know, and then turning on the right layer and turning it off, or just asking for that dedicated map to be created that would be live. So that if there's changes or, you know, for example, we have a detour on Battery Street for the bike path right now. So 2 of the accessible spaces are moved to King Street. So that if someone went into that map and saw that, you know, where am I going and where do I park, they could have that information right away that it's changed.
So remember how that I just showed the link in the chat room of the Vermont Legislative. So they have an accessibility map. The only thing that I would give feedback is they don't have a text version for people who are blind. So I don't know. I mean, really, everyone who's blind or visually impaired, the spectrum varies. So when it comes to reading the map, the actual map on a screen reader, some people might be able to see it, some people might not. So that's when you have to provide a text version with a good description of every, you know, ramp or anything that you can think of. That would be helpful. And then the other thing that you want to think about is, I'm looking at the map right now as an example. I know that they didn't even mention, well, they mentioned, no, they didn't. Interesting. But they did on the second map. They showed all of the accessible restroom, but they color coded so it's now accessible for someone who's blind or visually impaired. So,
Okay,
that's
so that,
an example.
yeah, so that's definitely something that, you know, we can think about including it. So we have about 20 minutes left. I think we've established some initiatives that we can, you know, submit and ask, you know, when requesting funding to do. I guess the steps, and so we technically would have 2 more meetings to put something together. I mean, I would think we would want to get something out sooner than later. A request to the, so Vanessa, would it be to CETO and then CETO would make the request to the mayor's office, or would we send something directly to the mayor's office?
So I feel like it should be probably both at the same time. I do think it's wise to have a conversation with CETO first because that's where the dollars would be. The way that we did the request last time was we just wrote directly to the mayor.
Okay.
And in terms of timing, I would strongly encourage our committee to have something ready by the next time we meet.
Okay.
Because I know budget proposals, they're moving very quickly. And I know that there was a request to increase for the city's budget that was denied by council. And so I know that there's, you know, some constraints in having a conservative budget.
Okay. Okay. So how do we want to go about, Sophie?
Sorry, not to interrupt, but I just was wondering, Vanessa, the budget that we have, the 15,000, does it come from general fund and therefore does it go away? No, it continues.
The reason why we have that fund is because Catherine was overseeing my department at the time. And I asked for that money to be set aside in HR. So we got it, but that was only because of a special request and I think circumstance. But I think that moving forward, now that CETO is staffing the role, that money would end up sitting in CETO for any requests moving forward.
But what I was trying to, sorry, I didn't ask
No,
it
this is
right.
good.
It's just, does the money disappear? Let's say we didn't use any of the $15,000. Does it disappear on July 1st because it's a general fund and then it gets reallocated to something else? Or does it carry over? Because usually it's just projects that carry over from year to year.
I don't actually know the answer to that question. I could ask my director about it because right now the money's sitting in HR, but we're going to be moving it over to CETO. So it would be CETO's decision in terms of what happens to it. And I know that that hasn't been mechanized quite yet.
Okay, I would just want to know before we get any closer to it, to know if we have to quote unquote hide it. It's not hide, but
yeah, no, I know what you mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know the only thing we've used it for thus far is interpretation services. Because when we first requested the dollars, it was intended for staffing, marketing, and interpretation. And I think every interpretation that we do is like a little over $100, and we've only done a couple of those really.
Yeah, I think when we initially did it and it was, Vanessa and Martha and Emma really pushed for that, we were also pushing to do, also using some money for some possible, say we saw something for, an adaptation that needed to be made to a municipal property to say, hey, look, this has been a big issue going on. Would you like to use some of our budgets? And but mainly it was for the staffing and the events planning and stuff like that. And I definitely think we could still do that. So going down to Vanessa's point of getting something to get ready to get sent out by the next meeting, I think we have the bones for that in some of the previous memos we've sent. We can certainly, and I guess this is where I just wonder, this is where I wonder about committee rules and stuff like that. If we did something like made a copy and put it on a shareable document for us to kind of share and go around, is that, do we need, how available do we need to make these committee notes that we share on off meeting times, I guess? Is this something where we can pass it around and then just go over a final version at the last meeting? Yeah, okay. Okay. So what we could do is if Ethan, what I could certainly try to do is, Ethan, if you can get us the minutes with these ideas down, I could take a stab at putting down an initial draft, and I could try to get something out by, what is it, Monday? So probably early next week to try to put something together and people could just kind of add some parts to it. I would need help with the nuts and bolts on the, I could talk about what we're planning on doing, what we're hoping to doing. I think I would need help on the things like a monetary figure and stuff like that. I could definitely start a rough version if people want to then take a look at that. I don't know what people's feedback, how we want to go from here, how wide do we want to send it? I could certainly do a Google Doc, start a version like that, and we could just pass it around and let people do edits. I just don't want it to turn into a little monster where we have so many people suggesting changes that we do that. So I'm certainly open to suggestions on that. I'm willing to make a start on it though. Okay, so I could just start something, I can send it to people and we could just, yeah, okay. Okay, great. So what I will do is I will plan on putting something together and then I'll send it people out. See, here's the thing, I'm a Google guy, but my work is Microsoft. So I kind of want to send out stuff with Google, but then when I have everything linked to my home emails, and then what happens is I get a bunch of stuff meant for work sent to my home stuff. So I'm gonna try to do it with maybe Microsoft 365, but we'll see. Sometimes I notice that some people have issues sharing it. So what I will do is what we could do is once we get the minutes from Ethan and some things put together, we can pass it out to the committee members. I will try to put together something, an initial draft to be out by next Monday. And people can look at it and we can start putting feedback on it and tying some stuff together and hopefully have something to send to the mayor's office by the end of the mayor's office in CEDO by the next meeting, which is, we are still meeting the third Monday of the month. So it'd be May 23rd, no, May 16th, actually. So it'll be May 16th. At 3 o'clock. And people are still, I know it's never gonna be a perfect time. People are still okay with this time. Okay. Anybody else have anything they want to discuss?
Yeah, actually, I just have a quick question, mostly for Laura, or if anyone else has any insight, that would be great. How comfortable are you with Zoom as a software? Like, because I noticed earlier when Nate was sharing his screen, you mentioned that you couldn't see your interpreter. Is that like an issue that you get often?
I'm an expert. In
Yeah.
fact, I was the one who handled the Doom Gov section last week with the language asset summit. So I did everything. I don't know, for some reason I just wasn't able to remove drag the toggle over. I don't know.
Oh,
why.
okay. Yeah, the only reason I'm asking is because for the language access plan, one of the resources we've been looking at is a software called Kudo. And it is remote simultaneous. Yeah, I'll just write it in the chat. It's KUDO. So it's a remote simultaneous interpretation software. And you can think of it as kind of like Zoom, but you can hit a button and there will be an interpreter speaking a language at the same time. And you can swap between languages like that. It's a software that actually the UN uses. Yeah, I actually have a meeting coming up with our point of contact with them this week to talk about Zoom integration for that software. If you, I don't know, if you have any issues with Zoom that you think could be improved from interpretation aspects, could be good to know.
I
Yeah.
found that Zoom is actually the best virtual platform. In fact, on my website, I have a link to educate people how to use all of the different virtual platforms. Let me see if I can find it.
Oh,
But
great.
that would be interesting. I've heard of Kudo more for a spoken language aspect. I don't think we've used Kudo in terms of a sign language, ASL. You know, we usually have a telerelay and some things like that. But it's very interesting. I was just wondering, I'm sorry, Laura, if you didn't see did you not see the interpreter while I was sharing the screen? Could you not see it? Because
No, I could. It's just he was small. His video was small.
yeah.
I
Because I was
just
gonna
wasn't
say,
able, for whatever reason, I just wasn't able to drag the toggle.
yeah, I was just wondering if there's anything I need to do as host as sharing that, because I just assumed that it would be up to the person to change their view so they could have see speaker and they could have like a change their view for seeing the, you know, person people in the corner. Because one thing that I do all the time is when I give presentations, some people just see the what's being shared, and you can change that. You have to change the view to see, you know, the gallery on the side, and that's something that. So I wasn't sure if there's anything I needed to do on my end. You know, because
You could, but it would just be more work for you. So like, for example, normally when I host a meeting with more than like 10 people, I always have all of the people who are not speaking have their video off. And then I always encourage people to hide the non-video participant. That way it increases the bandwidth and the video resolution of myself and the interpreter. That just makes it easier, more accessible, and less work behind the scenes. So like, but if you didn't do that, then you would have to handle the spotlighting feature, which is a lot of work and a little bit of a headache, but it is something that you could do if you were a host and you were trying to be accommodating with someone who was deaf or hard of hearing.
yeah, well, that's more my thought is if we start doing some trainings and doing some things or doing things over Zoom, we want to make sure that we have a deaf and hard of hearing interpreter. We want to make sure that people can actually see them interpreters. So that was more my mindset, not this, but making sure we, if we're have somebody doing that, we say, hey, you need to make sure that, you know, that we give instructions beforehand that people can see the interpreter.
Well, like I said, I have that guide I shared in the chat. I explained it.
Yeah.
I explained it quite well of what you could do to make sure that the interpreter is visible and also with captioning. So remember, not everyone relies on ASL. Some people rely on the captioning, but the AI captioning is not always accurate. And that's when you need to hire a live captioner. Another reason why I like Zoom is because when you do hire live captioners, they can embed the captioning into the virtual platform. All the others, you can't.
Okay. So I think Amber.
Yeah, I'm sorry, just kind of last minute, I thought, you know, as we're talking about digital platform accessibility, I'm just curious if another recommendation you may want to think about is recommending a digital accessibility audit of the Burlington resources. You know, as I'm thinking about us talking about posting resource pages and maps and these kinds of things, that seems like a real integral part. Like we would want to put things up there that aren't accessible and then just kind of create more of a problem for ourselves down the road.
So Amber, you brought up a great point of something that I always forget about, and I have a colleague of mine who works on this all the time, is when we talk about accessibility, we talk about different things, but I think we should also advocate for things like are this, making sure websites are accessible, make sure they meet ADA standards. Like, I don't know if the city of Burlington has done a website audit or anything like that, so, really kind of encourage that to make sure that, they have the, be able to increase the font, do everything like that. So, because I do think that is also something that we should also look into. Because we're talking physical, we're talking about deaf, hard of hearing, we're talking some things like that. But one thing that somebody had already mentioned up is like make sure websites are following ADA standards as well. So I definitely think that would be something else we could do. Yep.
Share a link in the chat of a company that's actually based in Burlington that actually can help with making sure the website is ADA compliant.
Well, there's a lot of places that actually can sometimes pay people that actually go in and look at websites and determine, they kind of test the websites. But of course, the places have to be willing to get their websites tested, and that's the whole thing where they go in and look at that. But that's something I think we can definitely add to the bears, because that's something that people always kind of oversee, and it's one of those things that's like a requirement under the ADA, and it doesn't happen half the time because nobody really thinks about it. It's not enforced. Okay, so it looks like we have the bones for doing some stuff. So I will start out doing a draft to go to the mayor's office for proposal for the initiatives for the upcoming year. We can pass that around. People can put down their suggestions, and we can change it. And then what we can do is we can finalize it at the next meeting, which is May 16th. I believe that's everything that I have to discuss. Any closing things, statements, requests? Sophie.
Just on the question of, or the discussion point of being involved in planning initiatives, is there, who should we tap from this group to be a part of that? Because we have an ongoing project, or it's just started at Letty Park, comprehensive planning for the whole park. And I just want to make sure that who wants to be at that table is there.
I keep on spreading myself thin, but I also know that I was doing the I know I really enjoyed the Oakland thing. So I mean, I can certainly try. I would like to do it as much because I also have a little 18-month-old who I plan on taking to parks all the time. So
Yeah.
So I would definitely like to be involved in that in some case. So if we can certainly get me, and plus BCIL should be involved anyway. So I mean, if you want to let me know about some information like that, I can certainly do that. And that would be, and on just on that one closing note regarding accessibility, when summer comes, I do think we should take a look at the Oakland Park and the changes that we've made, and definitely, I think BCIL is hoping to do, maybe take a look and do something there during the summer anyway. So but I do think that should be something where we should draw a highlight and make suggestions on into the park. And I also know that's something that Sarah Cooper, is that it? With the Burlington Carpenter.
Yeah.
That was really something that she's always been really passionate before, and she's been a big supporter of this committee. So I think that's also something that we could really kind of highlight our activities from. So yeah, let me keep me involved in that, Sophie, and I'll be in that anyway. And I know I already was kind of in our connections with the Oakleys, but I certainly think I would like to look into that.
Sorry.
Yep. No,
Speaking to Oakledge, we're looking to rehabilitate the restrooms so it's ADA, a lot more ADA accessible with an adult changing table and all that.
Okay,
so we're definitely right in the midst of that, and we just received some conceptual plans and some options for that, and we'd love to have your eyes on it, or someone else's eyes on it, just in terms of like, we look at it from a professional perspective of like codes and all that, but as a user, that's what I would really like to hear.
Excellent. And we can just keep that, because I know we're just about over. We have 3 minutes, but one of the other things that this committee used to do is used to have different representatives from different places and talk to the committee about stuff they're doing and stuff they're planning, and even give us tours of what they've done. And I think that would be something to do in the future. So I would certainly love to hear the plans and look at the plans and then ultimately look at the end results. Can't wait to go to Oakland this summer and see what the changes there. So. Okay, all right, thank you. Anything else? If not, I will bid you all adieu. Ethan, glad you're on board. Nice to meet you. All right, take care, everyone.
Take care. Nice to meet everyone too.
Bye.
Everyone.